Hello, listeners. We're delighted to flag off our first episode of Professors on Air with Professor Sunil Chandran, who is in fact a visiting faculty at our college, IIM Visakhapatnam. He is the director of Trillion Consultancy, which guides medium to large businesses in sales and marketing strategies and assists in the development of digital initiatives to support these efforts. He spent 25 years working with several national and international giants such as Nerolac Paints, Titan, Reliance Retail, Aditya Birla Retail, and many more companies. Apart from this, he has some lot of noteworthy achievements, some of which include setting up Krispy Kreme donut chains across South and West India. He managed Gloria Jean's coffee chain and Fun City entertainment centers across India. He set up the Timex national sales networks across India. And he has so much more achievements that we actually don't have the time to cover how much he's actually done throughout 25 years of his career. But once again, I would like to reiterate, we're incredibly excited to have you on board with us, sir. And we're really looking forward to this podcast.
Thank you so much. So whether by design or by default, we wouldn't know what I've gone through, right? So life is a journey where you wouldn't know what takes you around the next corner. It's like driving down a highway itself. Yeah. So both good and bad. Yeah. Thank you so much.
Welcome again, sir. Before we begin, we would like to introduce our listeners to ourselves. I'm Sadanira.
And I'm Rahul.
Now, continuing to the podcast. So, sir, you have completed your MBA in 1988 from XLRI, and you're also in touch with students now, so you are pretty much familiar with the MBA life now. We would like to know how these two compare.
Difficult, I guess, because it's generations apart in that sense. Some of it remains the same, I guess, yeah. So I guess the reason why we come to an institute, the kind of activities we do tend to remain the same. But by and far, some things are not seen during our time. For example, case competitions is something that we never went through during our academic life. Yeah, it's something a little more nascent in terms of an activity in a campus. But otherwise, campus life is fun because it needs to be a mix of academics, cultural, and of course, social activities that you would have in institutes. So not very different from my time. Just that I guess competition for admissions in institutes seems to have also gone up. So you actually sometimes tend to see maybe better level of students in some of the institutes, from what I have seen. Also the fact that early days, nobody knew what a management program was. Yeah, so people didn't know what a PGD BM was because most of it was from institutes which were not deemed universities, and therefore we all never got an MBA degree like what students do get now. We were all given a program which is called a PGD BM, and therefore my sense is the mix of students largely in many of the management schools those days, which is largely AC and Excel, which were the top three institutes those days, was more urban in nature. Today, you see people from a good mix of urban, semi-urban kind of locations, and that's a good thing, because you start seeing people coming from very small towns, which we didn't have much of an exposure to during our time. So it was learning itself happened to be or tended to be more a metro phenomena. So that, other than that, I don't see there's anything different between what's happening then and now.
Right.
Thank you so much for sharing with that, sir. So I'd like to start off first with, I read your article regarding service gaps in Nike, particularly when it was actually very interesting because one, it took me a little bit of time to understand what was being conveyed with respect to, like, you had three different clothings, each had three different discount rates, and they had a problem with respect to accounting, right? How they wouldn't be able to return that. And I think you mentioned this point about how the workers there themselves, the people that are working in the retail stores, don't actually know, or rather cannot verify what they're conveying. They're saying something that wasn't actually maybe part of the standard operating procedure. And you call this phenomenon a service gap. And you mentioned that this is something that does in fact affect a lot of retailers, particularly in India. So I just like you to elaborate a little bit more on what that is and how, by bridging that, particularly in the Indian context, a lot of retailers can sort of provide a much better customer experience in our country.
So that's a great question. So let me start with a story. I was once sitting across from the president of Cafe Coffee Day, and he was telling me the story of, he had Cafe Coffee Day opened an outlet in Vienna, and apparently it's at the center of the town itself. He said that's the most central square that you have. So he said he went in there in the evening and he was sitting there, and apart from the barista who makes the coffee and somebody else who was helping prep the food, there were 2 staff who were serving the customers, right? And he said it was a fairly large outlet with a lot of tables and chairs outside. And he noticed that both of them were literally on their heels right through. So he was there for about 2 hours. And he waited till they closed the cafe, saying that he would take the staff for a meal because that was his first visit to the outlet after the outlet was open. And he offered to these women saying that outlet is doing extremely well. We are making decent profits out of the outlet. So could we consider adding one more staff to service itself? Because he kind of felt that possibly service could improve if you have more people. Yeah. And the first response from both of them were, they have families to run. They are a lot dependent on the tips that the customers give them. So they believe in giving good service with a smile, very friendly, quick service. So their only request to him was, even if a single customer complains on delay in service or quality of service, should he consider increasing the number of people in a store? And you roll it back to a situation in India, and if some of you get into retail or allied businesses, you will see the first thing that a store manager would tell you is he needs more people. He wouldn't be able to define and tell you why, but he will say that you give me people and I can increase sales. But actually in India, I find that there is sometimes a negative correlation between overbanning and underservice, because we are busy talking to each other or not getting involved in what's happening in the store. So in retail in India, sometimes it's important to figure out the optimum manning. And very rarely do you have to convince somebody to take in more people, because a lot comes in from our thinking that you see yourself as being more important when you have more people reporting onto you, possibly. Or the fact that dependencies sometimes on employees are a little less in India, in the sense somebody calls himself off with very little notice. Yeah. So if somebody tells you that, hey, I'm not feeling well today, possibly I may not come in tomorrow, at least it prepares you to figure out some way of managing your stores. Because in some cases, the number of employees in a store are less. But we have a situation where many a time people don't call in, and then the store manager is stuck with shortage of people. And that's also a genuine concern. So I think culturally, service orientation is something which we may not be very good at. And India is one of those few countries where we are likely to get very good service from a single store owner or an entrepreneur than really from a so-called organized retail organization, because for an employee working there, it's just another job. And many of them may not be looking at growth within your organization. So you end up getting possibly a little suboptimal service. Whereas when an owner sits in a store, and I've seen that in many places, you get very high level of stores because he kind of figures out that you're a genuine customer. He himself will come and deal with you, or he will ensure that the staff give you what you want. So service has many facets, but finally, we need to give in customers what they want, in any country in the world. So India is slowly coming in where expectations of customers in some kind of outlets are going up. By the same token, if you travel around the world and stay in hotels, the kind of service that you get in a Taj or a Oberoi is unparalleled anywhere in the world. You're literally not even ever said no. You ask for anything and you get it. So I go back to a story of mine where I took my family and we were staying in a property of Oberoi's in Udaipur, and I wanted a booking in a restaurant which is inside Taj. Technically, you're asking somebody to book a table for you in your competition location, right? So when I tried calling, they said there are no tables free this evening, and we were there only for that night and we were leaving the next day. But the duty manager managed to get a table for 4 of us. So that's other end of service. So we have a situation where in some situations, in some industries, I think in hospitality, clearly, I think service in India is unparalleled. You may not see this in many countries in the world, be it Europe or the US, or even if you have to get that kind of a service, you have to pay a lot of money. Whereas I think in many retail, as in goods retailing, we've still not reached a level where many of us would feel comfortable. So there are so service itself in my article, if you think about, there are multiple gaps, but the biggest gap that we see in India is actually what's called service delivery gap. where the organization knows service expectations, they have put in processes, they have trained people, but employees don't end up sticking to the routine. You see it very differently in, say, Indigo Airlines, for example. They follow the book. They are trained, and I'm actually told that many staff go through close to 3 months of training before they are actually allowed to enter the cabin itself. So we're seeing it in different places, but still a long way to come in businesses where likely that attrition is high and therefore knowledge transfer doesn't happen very seamlessly. Also, the fact that I think we are not very wired to follow instructions many a time, and therefore you see some slips itself. So I can keep talking about it, but we'll go ahead. Thank you.
So just a follow-up question, sir. Apart from training, what do you think Indian retailers could do to change this cultural mindset on service?
A very good question, because retail is the only business in the world where somebody who unloads a truck went on to become the CEO, and that's Walmart. So if you read what he was doing, he was just an unloading person in a truck. Retail is a business where you don't need a management school education, technically speaking. So somebody who's a school pass, or maybe who does his, I'm sure many of these people who grow do end up doing the graduation or post-graduation or an MBA maybe from an institute on a part-time basis, but many of them don't join after the MBA program. So I had a colleague of mine who came in from the US to work with me in Reliance Retail. He's an Indian and he wanted to work in India. So Babdeep started working when he was in school in a store near his home. He used to go to college from morning to afternoon, do the second shift every day on weekdays and possibly 2 shifts on a weekend. He went on to become a director in that organization. And then he came to India to work with us in Reliance Retail. So retail is a business where if we are able to provide the appropriate growth trajectory for anybody, then I think we shall start seeing more involvement of people. And possibly today what's happening is possibly it's the social evolution in our country also. So if somebody else offers employee 1,000 rupees or 1,500 rupees more, they tend to move without looking at the fact that possibly this organization is growing fast and therefore I could actually become a manager in some 3 or 4 years time. And then his salary will then be a multiplier of some 5 or 6 times of what he's drawing today. So maybe somewhere I think that organizations are partially at fault in not being able to really engage with an employee, show him a path, identify the good employees. So like we say in retail, attrition is a given, but ensuring that attrition of your better performers should always be monitored and kept. So at least your good employees shouldn't leave, and therefore try and give them growth sooner that they see an increase in money, responsibilities and things like that. Possibly that would help us in the longer run itself.
Right, sir. Now talking about the entire industry. So the retail industry in India is extremely competitive, and the industry attractiveness for foreign players is thus reduced. Also, FDI has hurdles now. So how do you think, what are the biggest advantages and disadvantages of this scenario?
Okay, so FDI theoretically was bought in sometime, I think in the 90s, if I remember right. Okay, that's when government woke up to the fact that retail is going to become a big business. There'll be foreign players coming in. So I worked for a company which got FDI to set up retail in India, both in the supermarket and in the health and beauty space. This was called Food World and Health and Glow. This was a joint venture with a Hong Kong-based international retailer in Asia called Dairy Farm International. Post that, the government said that FDI was only allowed in B2B businesses, which meant that I could not sell to customers directly. But of course, there were players who did find a backdoor entry because you can create multiple companies. For example, Walmart did open up stores in parts of Punjab, but it was through a joint venture with somebody else, and therefore they were handling only the back end, and technically they were doing the sourcing and selling it to another entity, which is an Indian-owned entity, which was running the stores itself. Over time, the government, in fact, has reduced the FDI hurdles. Amazon has now been given permission to be a retailer in the fresh food and category. So it's called Amazon Fresh. So where they buy directly from suppliers in India and sell, because the idea is that they were wanting the farmers to be benefited from dealing with larger organizations directly. But irrespective of FDI, the thinking is you wanted to protect your small retailers. Because there are markets in the US where there are no small retailers or what's called mom and pop stores. Everything is chain retail. And India is a nation where we are a nation of shopkeepers. Yeah, number of outlets wise, if you see, we are the largest in the world. In terms of square footage per capita population, we are one of the lowest in the world. So I think the thinking of the government is to encourage a small entrepreneurship, small businesses to continue to be in retail, because that provides a lot of employment opportunities, and also is an outlet for somebody, is an industry where even if you're not very well educated, it's not very difficult to be able to run a retail business, because it's just the simple innate trading quality that is required in any person to set up a store. FDI will keep going down, but I don't see very many international brands queuing up to come into India if FDI were to be loosened out, because I think whoever had to come and dip their waters already there into India. Walmart through Flipkart, Amazon already present. Amazon is a stakeholder, partially I think in Shoppers Stop. They are also involved in my earlier business, which is more. So you see that many brands are already present, either directly or indirectly, because of the FDI regulations. But today, so personally, there is two segments of retail. One is what is called single unit, 2-3 unit kind of retailers, which is your so-called kiranas or single store which sell fashion electronics. And then you've got organized retail. But the fact that very few players in organized retail have consistently learned to make money, that the industry is seeing spurts and pullbacks. So you see somebody coming in, opening a lots of stores, and they're actually pulling back stores, shutting them down. Also to add compound to the problem is the fact that world over, retail tends to be an organic business, in the sense somebody starts one store like Sam Walton did in the US. He does well. So his idea is to open a big store in a small town, as he calls it, a one-horse town, right? So Bentonville was a one-horse town where he opened a store, and then it did well. So he creates these stores in small towns where everybody comes to you because you're the largest store, and therefore he does well. So over 30-40 years becomes the largest retailer in the US. In India, we have the bigger industrial houses investing into retail. So you've got the Reliance, Mr. Ambani, Mukesh Ambani, you've got Tatas, you've got the Birlas, all of them investing money into the business. And therefore, I somewhere think that possibly if India had more homegrown retail, like so many other retailers all over the world, possibly our retail could have been a little more stable in our country. Possibly, that's just a thought, So today, one of the most successful so-called retail play is DMart, but that's more a real estate play than really a retail play, So I'm not sure even if FDI were to get completely eased up, there are going to be 10 or 20 retailers in the world who are waiting to get to India. I don't think so. Having said that, I also believe that nature of employment in India and opportunity for people to set up businesses and run small retail is always good. And like we started with by saying, possibly service in smaller retail could actually be better than organized retail, because the owner or his family or somebody is sitting there to give the service itself. So I would say that in a country like ours, it should be a healthy balance of both. So organized retail should bring in supply chain efficiencies, sourcing efficiencies. So possibly Walmart and Amazon being present in India should help a lot of exports also of goods from India itself. So what they find as lower price points to be sourced from India could help us also start exporting a whole lot of merchandise out of India. Well, traditionally, there are many categories that Walmart buys from India. Today, they are looking at broad-basing that more because of their presence in India. And the fact that internationally also, then there is a de-risking of supply chain that should help India to some extent. So retail is not only about our customers, but also export opportunities when you've got international players coming. But the ideal balance would be to allow local homegrown retail, and we're seeing this in many markets in India. Hyderabad, for example, in Telangana, has a lot of these smaller food and grocery retailers who have actually become very big. Ratnadeep, Vijayata, some of you may know about them. They were all single store outlets when I was setting up retail in Hyderabad. When was this? early 2000 and things like that. They're all now fairly large chains. So that's a good thing. So in a way, when somebody comes and sets standards, when others in the industry starts improving their standards, that's then good for everybody. Standards help the larger retailers source better. It helps customers get lower prices, better service, and therefore it's a win-win for everybody.
Got it, sir. Thank you. So we have another question. You've been involved, based on, of course, your consulting profession as well in your company, you've been involved in sort of scaling up businesses from the ground, and this is something that you have done quite a lot. And in fact, I believe you were involved in setting up the first organized player in India's retail industry. So I just considering, of course, because you've been basically working for 25 plus years, I just want you to give the audience a bit of a story about how this happened and something super interesting that you saw, that you might have observed during this process, because this is something that, considering the sheer timeline that you've been working with, you must have been able to see so many changes across this time.
Sure, thank you. There are some uniqueness in retail, which is a learning for very many businesses. First of all, retail is one of those few businesses where working capital tend to be negative. Yeah? So if you're smart, you will only carry as much of inventory as the credit given to you by your supplier. So if your supplier gives you 2 weeks of credit, you keep 12 days of inventory. Negative working capital is at the heart of retail business. And clearly, retail is the only business where every single unit of yours is the profit center. Very different from a lot of other businesses. Yeah. So when I used to work in Titan, many a time, even if you were to be heading sales, for example, you still don't have complete view on profitability of the business, because you operate at a certain transfer pricing, you operate at a certain margin band that you want to give to your market and to your channels. You have no idea about what the manufacturing cost is, or what's the cost of R&D, or what would be the amount of money that you would put into possibly building a brand as a sales head, and so on and so forth. Retail is a business which teaches you fundamentals of how to run a good business. So even a store manager quickly learns what P&L statement means, what does EBITDA mean, and things like that, because he is measured against that. So we aggregate the units, and when you talk about scale, the first thing you do in retail business is your unit level has to be profitable, which means at the store level, if you're not making money, then don't scale, don't open more stores. So some of the challenges India has faced with large businesses coming in is they think that few stores don't make money, more stores will make money. They don't. Because if a store doesn't make money at the unit level, scale only gives you more losses. Like what we today see in many online businesses, right? So the key thing in retail is to be able to understand two things. One, you understand marketing at its best because you're looking at a customer in the eye, right? So you know. So like you keep saying, for a brand manager, the store shelf is the moment of truth. When a customer looks at a product and the product says, pick me up, that's the final moment of truth that you've been waiting for, right? So retail, understanding customers is at its best in retail. Understanding financial matrices at its best is a good way to run a business. But my key takeaway after managing a lot of retail businesses is the fact that in most businesses, we measure output matrices, right? We will say sales, we will look at margin and things like that. Retail is one business which has taught me saying possibly input matrices are more important than output matrices. Yeah. So for example, you have a product like this pen. The first thing you keep asking is that what is your volume? How big are you in a city or in the country? Where is this manufactured? What are the channels it goes through? Can I break some of these channels and go and buy directly? Yeah. One of the reasons for Walmart's success in the US is an FMCG product category in US, distributor margins are high because cost of operations in US is very different. We learned this the hard way in Titan when we were trying to set up distribution in Europe, right? Distributors will ask you for a minimum guarantee on the profitability you commit to them. So not only will you have to give them an estimated P&L, but if you don't meet those bottom line, you may have to write a check and give it to him because he says, I'm investing what you're asking me to invest. In India, because of want of a lot of opportunities, distributors line up outside their office to take any product or category, even if it's not an easy category to manage. So the distributor margin is low. So for example, in food world, the first retail chain we set up, the board wanted us to deal directly with most of the FMCG brands. So we were working with levers. Yeah. So levers said, yeah, we will pass on the distributor margin on to you. We'll treat you like a distributor. Yeah. But you don't realize that for a distributor from whom you are buying in Chennai, Bangalore, Hyderabad, Pune, the three places where we were working in, you're the biggest customer to a distributor. You're most probably the 100% of sales of that distributor. So he is able to bend himself backward to give you service. For example, if you tell him that I want you to come twice a day and supply, he's willing to do that. Yeah. If I tell him that I don't want any case lots, I want MOQs to be one, he's willing to do that. If I'm stuck with some inventory which I can't sell, I'll tell him, listen, please help me out and take it back, because he would then request the company to take it back. Now, when you get into direct agreement with the company, the first thing they tell you is that, sorry, you have to pay us in advance. Yeah. And in fact, levers won't even deliver out of the, they won't even dispatch out of the warehouse till your payment is cleared. Yeah. And then we had this huge thing of trying to do a kind of a bill discounting facility between our bank and his bank. Yeah. So they present the invoices to the banker, who discounts it and gives them the money, and then they dispatch to us, and I have to pay back my bank in 14 days time. And there is obviously a certain charge the bank would levy. So we have to negotiate commercial terms in terms of where does the margin go, who does it cost. But to cut a long story short, we realize, at least in the short run, possibly we are losing more by buying from levers directly. Whereas in the case of many markets like US, the moment you cut one channel, there is so much of margin that comes to you directly. Whereas we struggle in India to actually figure out, you get distributor margins anywhere varying from possibly 4% or 8% in many FMCG categories. Yeah. And sometimes service, inventory, credit, damages, expiry, returns, all those could possibly have been better through your distributor. So DMart, for very many companies, the distributors deal with DMart, not the company directly. Yeah. So end of it, what we have to understand is that even when you go up the channel in India, opportunity for additional margins is relatively less. It's not that it's not there, it's relatively less. So you have to really be sure that a small kirana who enjoys credit, returns, damages, offers and discounts may not be very different from a large organized player like possibly Reliance or more. Yeah, the differential in margin is low, but the differential in cost of operations is very, very high. And therefore, it's not always very, very easy to be competing with even a smaller market itself or a smaller retailer as a competition itself.
Right, sir. We were initially talking about finance at its best and marketing at its best. Could you tell me how financial considerations and marketing strategies intersect in the retail industry, particularly when making decisions about expansion or opening a new store?
Sure. First, I'll tell you about operating stores and then we'll talk about new stores. Yeah.
Right.
Simple things like, for example, my marketing head's budget will be the revenue that he can generate from selling space in a store. Yeah. So the store itself is a real estate that you have. So the space outside the store, within the store for signages, behind the cash bills or POS bills for branding. So much so that we never kept a budget for marketing, but we said whatever you earn, you can spend. So that's marketing at its best. So you had a marketing team who were really trying to ensure that we generate what is called other income, which is called non-trading and promotional income. Yeah. So the merchandising team or the buying and merchandising team gives you the margins, trading margins, and your marketing team gives you what's called the other income. Sum of both is basically your total gross income itself. So that's one way of looking at a business, which is very different from being in a sales and marketing organization. The fact that retail is all about running small experiments makes it the best place to do all kinds of you take the 4 P's, right? Product, pricing, promotions, communication, placement of products in a shelf. Yeah. All of this you can keep experimenting in. You do in one store, you see something works, do it in a second store, you know it works, do it in a third store, it works. Now you run it across all your chain of 500 stores. So in a way, our ability to be able to turn around what is called multiple MVPs every day. So if you're a smart retailer, there are some hundreds of MVPs happening across your chain. And maybe 20, 30 of those 500 in a month will be successful and you'll replicate it everywhere else. Yeah. So it's a business where we keep creating or playing around with all the levers of a marketing mix on a constant basis. And you are able to see it because customer is transacting every day. Yesterday, this pen was kept on this shelf. I sold 10 units. Today, I kept it in a better location. I sold 25 units. So it's a no-brainer that, is this giving me better margin than the earlier product which was kept at a premium shelf? And if that is so, put the pen there for some time and see if it can help you get more margin itself. From a finance perspective, I told you about working capital. Secondly, I understood that retail is one business where most of us need to know how to convert your, as far as possible, costs that are fixed and controllable to what I call non-controllable and variable. Yeah. And what do I mean by that? And I link it back to store openings. Yeah. The best way to run a profitable store expansion is when you don't have a target for new store opening. You only open if you get them at the terms that is sensible for you. Yeah. And extending that, for example, you take a market like Palasa near Vizag. I remember that some landlord wanted to start a supermarket business. Yeah. He put the rackings in, he created the store, he has done everything, but then chickened out and wanted to run a store. So he came to meet me in Bangalore and he said that he showed me pictures and he wanted me to come to Palasa to see the store office. Yeah. Palasa is not far from Vizag. You stand in the highway, you see a board which says Palasa so many kilometers from your institute. Yeah. So I went there and I kind of thought that it's a very small town, a lot of cashew industry there, a lot of money there, but no organized retail there. So I asked him and he said, I'll give you whatever rental expectation that you have. But I told him it's not so much the rental. It's a market where I would not have gotten if I had not listened to what you had to say or what you were willing to offer us. So I told him, I will give you a rental. I will give you a variable reimbursement on his assets. Yeah. So I said, what is your expectation in terms of and I can actually now tell you that I don't want any of your assets. You throw it out and I'll bring my own assets, right? So it's a waste of money for you. We were able to manage a commercial deal where my fixed asset investment in that store was very minimal, and working capital, as I keep telling you all, is anyway negative. Yeah. So my payback or ability to be able to achieve a payback was so easy at even a very small rate of sale per month. Yeah. And over time, it was one of the most profitable stores that we had in our Vizag DC itself. Yeah. So looking for opportunities where you think you can leverage your power as a chain. Of course, this is a very one-off exception. You're not going to get this all the time, right? But the only thing you can think of doing is over time, when I used to open stores, we make mistakes, especially when you open stores at rapid pace, like what you saw in More and in Reliance. Yeah. I learned that we have to start making as much of our assets as possible, as flexible as you can, which means that we never took a property where we have to invest in any civil work. Early days, we used to have a standard tiling. We used to have the tile we used to put ourselves. Yeah. We used to build the civil work in terms of a back room and washrooms, changing rooms, staff room and things like that. We insisted that if any landlord has to give us a property, we would rather pay him 1 rupee more on rental, but he does everything and gives it to us, including the fact that the signage that we had in a store was standardized. So even if one store did not do well, my exit cost in that mistake was as low as possible. And I would factor that into my budget, saying that 1 in 20 stores would be a place where I may have to shut down. But then the write-off was so small that it didn't impact us. And once we did this, then we could scale rapidly. That's one way of looking at scaling and store opening, like you said. Second thing is technology. Today, India has a lot of data, and there are a lot of players who are able to give you a lot of detailed information about the catchments around a location. Yeah. So much so that I was working with a company in Aditya Birla Retail Limited, where we shared a lot of our past GPS location with him, got him to estimate sales, and we started giving him the actual sales data. His algorithm over time would be able to predict a 90% accuracy. So he will say 100 plus or minus 10% will be the sales in this location. So what that did to me was, when I get a location and I pass it on to him, and his estimate says 30 lakhs, I would assume it is 27 lakhs of revenue. And then work on a payback, which if it meets within your budgeted requirements, you go and open a store. So the ability to be able to spot the location right improves a lot with technology. Don't ask me how they get that information. I wouldn't know for sure, but a lot of it, I'm sure, is from the hand phone data itself. Yeah. A surrogate for a good catchment is the credit card bills in the of the customers there. A good surrogate is the power units that is being consumed per household. Yeah. A good surrogate could also be property taxes that are collected by the government. So there are multiple data points one could tap to be able to understand how many socioeconomic segment classification wise, say B and above live in a particular catchment or not. So technology a lot of role to play in how retail is evolving in India, and the fact that technology also helps you be able to predict a lot of things, right? You can even apply this to marketing, CRM, all of that is being completely data driven now. Yeah, predictive analytics can actually tell you. I was reading last week, I was sitting through a workshop where I was told that Uber is able to predict their churn rate of drivers and who are the top drivers who are likely to have a churn. So they get into an engagement program with these drivers to see how they could retain them, because they are their best drivers they have in their pool itself. So predictive analytics clearly will help us a lot in looking at consumer behavior, supplier behavior, and all of those.
So before I move on to the next question, because some of our listeners, we're still first year MBA students. So when you talk about negative net working capital, we have a very formulaic understanding of that, like current assets minus current liabilities. So could you maybe explain to us briefly why the retail industry is able to have a net working capital? Because like you said, every industry would love to have as little retail inventory as possible, right? Because that's just cash that's just sitting there that is not being able to. Something about the retail industry is allowing it to be this way as opposed to maybe some other industry. Could you give us a glimpse on why that is?
It's not so much of how much of credit. Suppose you have the supplier of this water bottle and he says the standard terms to you is 2 weeks of credit. Yeah. So now before I start, so first of all, in most businesses, you will say, I don't want to keep this product if it's a new product, right? Because I don't have any past track record of performance. Yeah. So the first thing I would tell a supplier would be, I already have multiple players. If you insist, there are 2 conditions under which I will keep your product. One is you have to give me better margin than what others are giving in the category. Secondly, I will try you out for 3 months. Yeah. So I will put your product for 3 months. I will only pay you what I sell. So every week or every 2 weeks, I will check what is my sale and I'll pay you the money. Yeah. After 3 months, we will sit and negotiate. So now we'll sit to a situation and say water margin. Surprisingly, water, which is a basic need in our country, has one of the highest margins in the food and grocery space. Yeah. So I think you get more margin than possibly even a sinful carbonated beverage or a tea or a coffee category itself. Yeah. So water margins are very high. So assuming that this does well, and he says, yeah, what I can offer you is possibly 2 weeks of credit. I give my distributors 2 weeks of credit, so I'll pass the same on to you. Now I know that my rate of sale of this item by store, I have information for the last 3 months. Assuming for store A, I sell say 20 packs a day, and therefore 2 weeks would actually mean into 14. Yeah. So what is that? About 280 pieces or so. I would keep in inventory at any point of time, say 200 or 220 pieces. But I will go back to the supplier and say, you will replenish this every day. You will ensure that your fill rates are 100% so that my buffer in inventory is low. So I carry possibly 10, 11 days of inventory, but I pay him after 14 days. Yeah. So if you all read the first book that Jeff Bezos wrote in 1999, possibly, yeah, or possibly closer to 2002, 2003, yeah, he says that he was losing money in transactions and selling books, but he had so much of money that he was buying a lot of small businesses with that money. Why? Because he was getting books at 120 days credit and he was selling them on cash. Yeah. So that's the logic of a negative working capital. Yeah. So you will not invest money in stocks as much as possible. Of course, there may still be some brands where you may have to invest because that's a very strong brand, but you'll offset that with some other brand which is a little weaker brand. But logically, everybody, so most businesses I have run with, possibly negative working capital would be about at least anywhere between -1 to about -6 days, -7 days or so.
Thank you for clarifying that. It's pretty fascinating. It's not something that we've come across because our curriculum is very constrained to getting these formulas done before we can actually move on to the implications. So moving on, you were also responsible for setting up Krispy Kreme outlets in India, and it is a chain from the US. It's a pretty prominent chain there. But The items are when it comes to the prices we get here, it is a very premium price. We're talking about packet 2 donuts might be around $120 or something around those lines. You can get those type of donuts in small bakeries as well. But it is an outlet that is doing really well, and from our perspective, we see it as a change in the Indian consumer behavior that is allowing it to do well. My assumption would be that this wouldn't work 5-6 years back, but now it is possible. I just wanted to have your take on it. Maybe you could give us a little clarification on why Krispy Kreme is successful, why the current nature of India is allowing it to do so, and how maybe the Indian consumer's behavior, the rising middle class, a more aspirational, more consumerist mindset, how retailers are taking advantage of this shift.
Sure. So you're right about the price point. For example, when we launched Krispy Kreme in India, original glaze, which is a signature product of Krispy Kreme, we used to sell singles at 46 rupees. Yeah. So when I got the president of Krispy Kreme International to come to India, and I took him to a McDonald's outlet in a mall, and I bought him what is a Makkalu Tikki, which those days was 25 rupees. And then I took him to our store and I told him to bill for an OG. And then I told him that you can actually buy 2 burgers for the price of an OG. Yeah. So that was the first time that they stood up to understand that it's not obviously easy to sell at these kind of price points. So then we were able to push them into localizing the supply chain itself, because till then, for the first 6 months after we launched in India, we were getting the wheat from Australia, we were getting the palm oil from Malaysia, we were getting the sugar from, I think, Australia and stuff like that. Yeah, very, very expensive because of the freight and the cost of the goods itself. So one thing was to make them understand the price point. But despite that, even today, Krispy Kreme is expensive. Yeah. So we realized that when we signed up, I remember vaguely saying it is some 100 outlets for 5 years is what we signed up. But I think we should have opened 100 stores by 2017. I don't think we're anywhere close to that number even now. So obviously what it does is you recalibrate your network plan. So which means if you earlier thought that Bangalore could have, say, 30 or 40 outlets, you now say that you can only open 15 possibly or 20. Yeah, because purely on affordability. Yeah? So beyond whatever we could do to bring the cogs down and set the operations right, even work with lower cost in terms of rentals, it was not possible to reduce the prices because cogs still was fairly high. And unfortunately, you also have a lot of expiry, yeah? In the sense that we don't keep a product of Krispy Kreme beyond about 8 or 9 hours. So what is produced by the morning 2 or 3 in the 3 a.m. is shipped and sold before 3 p.m. or so. So it's a 12-hour window. And then what is made in the morning by about 10 or 11 is what is supplied to the stores to be sold in the evening. But there are a couple of things as to what makes it unique. You take a bite of a Krispy Kreme original glazed when it's freshly prepared off what we call the machine, it melts in your mouth. Yeah. So anybody who eats a Krispy Kreme donut, in fact, Krispy Kreme is the only, Krispy Kreme holds the copyrights for the word called donut, DOUGHNUT. World over, nobody can use this word because that's the IP'd logo, name, brand, everything of Krispy Kreme International. So even that word donut can't be used by anybody else. So it's donut in its truest form. Any food products in India, India in one of the few industries in India where I think quality trumps price, which means we are willing to pay more for that particular biryani in Hyderabad or that particular dish in some particular place, provided the quality is consistently maintained. But what it does is, of course, it keeps aside a lot of people from consuming it very regularly. So fairly early on, we realized that we had to be involved in emotional moments in a customer's life. Yeah. So 2-3 things. Our entire marketing budget was spent on sampling. So even before we launched in any market, for example, Mumbai, Bangalore, Chennai, we would sample a lot of the donuts and especially OG. So anybody who ate that OG can be sure will come and stand in a queue. So even when we were opening a store in any city, we had huge queues outside our store. and not necessarily young people, like what you see in your institute. In fact, the first person in the queue in Bangalore was a lawyer, practicing criminal lawyer. So I was so impressed with him that we got him to cut the ribbon for my second store in Mall in Whitefield in Bangalore. Yeah. So it was not only the younger people, but we actually saw that there are many people who like the taste. So what we did was we started engaging with people on memorable days in their lives. Yeah. Birthdays, wedding anniversary, graduation days. We started collecting a lot of data about our customers, and we would sell them free samples on these days. So much so over time, it becomes a habit in your minds that when is a wedding anniversary, the meal is not complete without a box of original glaze. Yeah. Secondly, we didn't discount the singles and twos, but we discounted the dozen boxes. So our idea was, and we saw this from what we see in the US. Yeah. So when we were standing in the outlet in the US, people come buy a dozen and go home, because this brand is part of sharing. Nobody comes and buys one and have coffee and sit there and eat. They just buy a dozen, take it home. So everybody at home has it over 2 days after a meal, right? So we started pricing attractively on the dozen boxes, promoting that quite heavily in stores, associating with people on memorable dates, doing sampling as a big driver. And we do accept the fact that I think even today, it's not easy to afford to buy a Krispy Kreme donut. Yeah. But it's a question of, we call it actually indulgence. So you feel like indulging yourself possibly once a week, once in 2 weeks. So you'll go pick up a few, or you'll buy one or two. And I've seen kids who come and sit with half a dozen and finish it off. And I used to be shocked. Yeah. Because it's still very sinful from a health perspective. It's fried. It's like a vada. Many people think donuts are baked. They're not. They're fried. They're fried in palm oil. Yeah. It's sinful with so much of sugar, but of course it's delicious in the mouth. Yeah. And when it's very tasty, people will stick. So I think we made some mistakes in markets like Mumbai, where we went to premium real estate places and things like that. And therefore they had to shut down Mumbai. And I think they moved most of those assets into Hyderabad. So currently I think it's present in Bangalore, Chennai, Hyderabad.
Right, sir. That was beautifully explained. You have extensive experience in diverse industries. So how has your multifaceted background influenced your approach in managing the portfolio and retail brands like Gloria Jean's Coffee, Krispy Kreme Donuts, and Fun City? Also, what were some key challenges that you faced?
Sure. So very, very different kinds of business. That was my last assignment. Yeah. So I was managing 4 brands at that point of time. Fun City is an entertainment center for children, which is mostly a indoor entertainment center. Yeah, semi-indoor. Some cases it can be outdoor too. Yeah, but most of the outlets we have in India is indoor. This is a business which is highly capital intensive, very high EBITDAs, but payback will take a long time. Retail lower, which is okay. Krispy Kreme, the hub store is capital intensive, but every spoke store is low on capex, and therefore paybacks are much, much faster. So you have two different kinds of business. But what is most important, and I keep saying this all the time, is for any consumer facing business, you have to get your format right. What is format? Format means what is the size, what kind of assortment, what kind of technology you have to adopt, what kind of pricing do you do, and therefore what is it that you stand for as far as the customer is concerned. So if you get your format right, be it a Fun City or a Krispy Kreme, then you can scale. So my learning, and with all the experience I've had till then, was only to figure out. So it took us, in the case of Krispy Kreme, about 4 or 5 outlets and about a year to understand what is the right format for us to expand. Once we get that is only a cookie cutter in terms of saying that I won't go to a place more than this kind of rental. So I would want this size, subject to a rental cap of so much. So if I get a little bigger space with the same rental, I'm still okay. But either my rental or my size is the cutoff as far as format is concerned. And therefore, then you look at what should be your capex, and how do you kind of see, how can you get malls to be a part of their investment, or try and negotiate around, for example, in the retail business and rentals in India, the biggest headache is rental deposits. Yeah. So very many locations, when Krispy Kreme was doing well and people wanted us to open, I said, only 2 months of rental deposit. I can't afford to pay more. Yeah. So you can do that if you're a little bit successful and the mall operator wants you there, kind of a thing. Yeah. Not easy in all cases. So if you think you're doing well and people want you in terms of retail locations, then you can become a little more sticky and therefore bring your total investment down. Because real estate in India, once you give a landlord a rental advance, very unlikely you will get the money back even when you exit. And I learned this the hard way. Yeah. And therefore it's good to keep your exposure limited, so that if you decide to vacate a place, you just stop paying rental for 2 months, 3 months, and then come out of that property itself. But it's not easy, but the basic principles remain the same. So like I keep saying that any business has if it's a well-run business, needs to give you a certain return on your invested capital. So be it a retail or be it a manufacturing. So if you run it well, you need a certain ROIC. So you keep your eye on the ROIC and understand, like you said, don't look at it as an output measure, but look at everything that goes into creating a certain input measures to help you get that right. Yeah. For example, how do you do pricing in a fun city? You don't do ride by ride pricing or unit by unit pricing. Yeah. You give a prepaid card for a certain amount and you give an unlimited usage. Yeah, typically a lot like what Wonderla does. Yeah, so you have an entry charge and you pay. So we didn't do it that way, but we kind of tried a mix of multiple things, so that any walk-in, we wouldn't want you to just come in and play only one game and pay some 50 rupees. Yeah, we would ensure that you are given cards where you load it up to 500 rupees and things like that. So I'm at least sure of that particular revenue. You don't do that in retail when you're selling products because you can't insist on that. So it's like a subscription model or an upfront kind of a model where allows you to spend a certain time and use it. So you apply all your learnings as a student of management, but you keep your eye on what are the matrices that can finally influence what is your ROIC. And by the way, Gloria Jean's Coffee was a chain that I closed down because we can never get a format right. So when you believe you can't get your format right, you shouldn't waste your time. So I convinced the board into saying that it's better we wind it down. And that's the mistake we made, in the sense that we wound it down in Mumbai, and Mumbai had a large number of stores, and we converted all those stores into Crispy Kreme, but they were unfortunately at a much higher rental itself. And so Crispy also had to exit Mumbai much later.
Sir, while we were preparing for this podcast, one of the things that we learned was Omnichannel, and particularly post-COVID, it seems to me like Omnichannel has almost become, you need to have it if you want to compete, or particularly, when we had our social distancing, the ability to order something online and come and pick it up. Having said that, I think it seems to be a significant challenge for organizations to do this, because if it wasn't, then it would be widely adopted by now. So I just want to for you to give us a glimpse on why, one, why this is so important, and two, like why it's so difficult to do this particular thing.
So the word omnichannel itself is often misused. People assume that a multi-channel is an omnichannel strategy. Yeah? But omnichannel in the truest sense actually says that the experience that I get in online or offline should be the same. And that is actually not feasible because if you look at the value curve and look at attributes around online versus offline, in online, there is something called a delayed gratification, which means I pay for a product. Yeah. I go to Amazon, I order this phone, I pay for it. I'm waiting for the phone to come to me after 3 or 4 days. So world over, research shows that delayed gratification is the reason why people don't always buy online. Yeah. So they buy it for, as I call it, customers are there both in online and offline. It's a need state. Yeah. I have fruits and oats for breakfast. I go to a physical store close by here and buy them. But if I'm traveling to Vizag, I've got classes there, but I need fruits the next day morning. I can sit in Vizag and order for the fruits. It'll get delivered home in the morning. Yeah. So it becomes a convenience factor. Yeah. But for any retailer, they should realize that their customers will buy either online or offline, depending on the need that they have at that point of time for that specific shopping itself. Why do online retailers want to go offline? Because offline market is bigger. Why do offline retailers want to go online? Because many of their customers want the convenience of online. Yeah. So in a market like India, possibly we will start seeing online adoption more and settling down when people realize that you have to pay more for the convenience of sitting at home and ordering. Because somebody is obviously picking it up, packing it, bringing it and delivering it to you. There is a price to it. Yeah. So we are all used to online being cheaper. We have to start getting used to the fact that online possibly will become more expensive than offline. So if you look at data even today between Amazon and Walmart, Walmart is much cheaper than Amazon, because the latest Amazon financials, if you pull out and see, their fulfillment cost and delivery cost is something like 28%. And that's possibly higher than the gross margin you'll get in India in many categories itself. Yeah. So that's one part of it. So omni-channel or a multi-channel, let me stay with multi-channel first, has to exist. You have to give your customers a choice saying that it's raining today. I don't feel like walking and going or driving to a shop in a two-wheeler. So I would want an online delivery, possibly. Yeah. But India, on the contrary, is also seen in many markets extremely high levels of service. Yeah. I used to live in a place called GK in Delhi. And for some of you are familiar with Delhi market, I had a Guptaji who was kind of part of the colony itself. I call him, I get material within about 10 minutes or so. Faster than Swiggy, Instamart. And he knows exactly what I buy, what I don't buy. When he suddenly realizes that I don't grow a beard, but I don't buy shaving needs from him, he'll come home and ask me, sir, kaun sa brand leते हो आप? मुझे ज़रा दिखाइए, मैं खरीद देता हूँ. So he ensures that you buy everything from him. He's very smart that way. And he's got this army of kids. I don't know where he gets his kids from. Moment you call him, there's a new fellow every time I see outside my door, but he's there outside my door in 10 minutes time. So the levels of service we saw in markets like Delhi, possibly brilliant. Yeah. So why would you want to order online when the neighborhood guy is giving it to you at a short notice? Yeah. So of course we can always say online is all about the long tail. But is it actually about the on tail? Because when you're ordering through your mobile phone, how much can you see in a screen itself? Yeah. So there are things like discoverability in online and things like that. My belief is everybody who's online will go offline. Everybody who's offline will go online. They will treat it as a multi-channel, but will it be truly omni-channel? Difficult to say. So what do I mean by that? There are product categories which are fluid in nature. For example, the shirt that you're wearing. Possibly both of us wear a 40 size shirt. But when you wear that shirt, you look very different from me because my body shape is different. Yeah. So how does an online retailer give the same experience as a physical store? Only by sending me 10 shirts and saying, Sunil, pick up 2 from this. That's what Amazon does in the US. It's called Amazon Wardrobe. It's not that I'm saying anything new. This is what I see in the world. Yeah. So in a way, any retailer who understands how he can recreate a physical experience through online and where the incremental penalty for the convenience is not very high. Today, I believe that Swiggy is overcharging. So I'm just hoping ONDC will break that monopoly. Yeah, Swiggy charges you, all the restaurants listed in Swiggy some 30% higher in prices because restaurants charge Swiggy more because Swiggy charges them a margin. Then Swiggy charges a delivery charge. Then Swiggy many a time in many markets in India I've seen also charges you what is called a platform handling charge or something like that. Some name comes up and you pay some little bit of money. Yeah, so you actually find that they are doing all this possibly because they're losing money. I wouldn't know, but I think they're going about it the wrong way. Yeah, we need to kind of ensure that a customer needs it, but you can't overcharge him for it. So ideally, we are able to create a situation where a brand or let's take a retailer, for example, like Shoppers Stop, whether I go physically and buy it or whether I go to Shoppers Stop online, if I'm able to create a similar experience and not charge me a very high penalty for the delivery or convenience, then I think that's a sweet spot where all of us wouldn't mind. We will be, like I keep saying, retail is a business where many of us forget that we are not loyal to the retailer. We are loyal to the brand. Yeah. So a retailer is finally somebody who's giving you a bundle of services. He's giving you assortment, he's giving you prices, he's giving you delivery, he's conveniently located to you and things like that. So when retailer starts understanding that their customers will buy both online and offline, and they, as much as possible, integrate the shopping journey experience with an incremental penalty, which is minimum in terms of online, that's when we'll actually start seeing more and more people doing both. Customers consume information both online and offline, so they will consume products also both in online and offline.
Right, sir. We see that in Western countries, brands like Sephora and Starbucks are appreciated for their omni-channel presence and experience. Can we say that the importance of omni-channel experience also differs because of the cultural differences between the West and East?
One is cultural difference. Second could also be technological adoption also. So Sephora app the virtual makeup in that app is good. But after having said that, tests do show that there is a marginal difference between you applying a lip color virtually versus going to a Sephora store and applying the color. There is a little difference in how you see it in a screen versus actually you see yourself in a mirror when you actually go to a store. So virtual mirror versus a real mirror, there is still some small differences. So technology will help Sephora. But having said that, this app of Sephora's helped them tide over their COVID times. Yeah, it's a great case study on that. In India, a very not so common B2C category, but Asian Paints app is also brilliant. So I think technology will help retailers improve the look and feel. But of course, it helps when it is a rigid product. Yeah. So paint is a rigid product, possibly on your wall. Yeah. A lip color application on a physical picture of yours is okay. But a shirt and a body could be different because it's fluid. Yeah. Or a spectacle is fine because it is a rigid product because it doesn't change shape. So somewhere the product category, but of course it is a cultural issue, no doubt about it, saying that let's take beauty category. US beauty is not gone very much online despite Sephora. It's still very small. Why? Because organized retail is big.
Right.
China, organized retail better than India, but nowhere close to US. Beauty has gone completely online. Most beauty taste makers in Instagram in China are from the beauty category. So maximum influencers in Insta or TikTok are all around beauty categories. And so in India, will it go the online way, offline way? Because offline is also not very evolved.
Mm-hmm.
Neither are customers likely to buy too much online. Because online comes with its own fear in customers' minds about. So for example, I was doing research on what stops you from buying online in a marketplace like Amazon or Flipkart. Can you guys guess what is the reason why people hesitate to still buy despite prices and despite everything else? In a marketplace, not a brand. Hanji.
Might be because of trust, right? Like you can't feel the product per se, and you're so used to the idea of buying it from a retail store, and disrupting that, especially with this like a behavior that's been entrenched for multiple generations. One of the things was, of course, cash on delivery,
which has gone away now.
Yeah.
Not there in most cases because it's a retail nightmare to be able to reconcile that. Yeah.
Yes.
One of the biggest fears of marketplaces is spurious goods.
Right.
Increasingly used goods, because many fashion retailers in some kinds of fashion see returns as high as 60-70%. And customers are smart enough to know that some of it is coming back to you. Of course, I know of some online retailers who do a swap test, also a microscopic check to see if, So it's very easy in a garment if you wear it even for half an hour. If I do a swab test of the shoulder, it will tell me whether there is any bacteria there, which means when you wear it, armpit is the place where bacteria grow. So even if you wear it for about half an hour, 1 hour, I can do a swab test to say this product is being used. So there are people slowly who are trying to stop that. But till that happens, the guarantee of a brand, there is a worry that there are so many multiple sellers. Who's selling an original product, who's selling a duplicate product? There is a little bit of a fear. There is some fear about used products coming in. And of course, like you said, the experience of touch and feel itself. Yeah. So it's possible that culturally there could be an impact on buying online. Also, I think within category, for example, if you take food and grocery, I don't mind buying Quaker Oats online, but I want to go and buy the green apple myself because I want to see the size. I want to see whether it's fresh, So I think within, or for example, I may buy a branded shirt online if I know that this is a regular fit 40 Louis Philippe is okay, but I may still buy innerwear, for example, offline, possibly, because I'm worried that I don't want somebody's returns to come back to me and things like that. So I'll go to a jockey showroom possibly and buy my innerwear. So I think customers are smart enough to figure out what's going on in the world around them. So if retailers start becoming tighter, for example, there are some online players who are very strict about returns. I think customers understand that. And therefore, they will start preferring to buy from those kind of online players, provided it meets their need state. Because what all of us are forgetting is the fact that retail is also a social need. Yeah. Especially markets like Bangalore, for example, where a lot of people work in technology, work from home. The socializing for me maybe is just going with my family to a mall or with my friends and having a meal, watching a movie and doing some shopping. So maybe I'll keep all my shopping for my weekend when I'm going to that mall to watch a movie.
Right.
So retail is also a shopping need, and therefore you will find that physical will never go away, online will never go away. Both will coexist, but for different categories at different levels itself, is my understanding. So I'm not sure whether I answered your question appropriately, but is it a cultural issue? Of course it is. So how people behave around you is the way that you will also behave.
Right, sir. So while researching, we came across two examples. One is Target. They recently launched sustainable style section on their website, which promotes and highlights products made with sustainable material or with sustainable processes, and also Patagonia's Worn Wear program. They encourage customers to repair and reuse their Patagonia products. So retail brands are promoting and educating their customers about sustainability now. What other ways can they find to promote this sustainability among their customers?
So this is a trend which is catching on. In India, we were always like that till a few years back or a few decades back, right? We never threw a shirt because a button went off, yeah? So all of us took that button back. Even now, there are tailors in most markets in India who will do patchwork for you, yeah? So if your shirt tore somewhere or your trouser tore somewhere, they'll mend it for you and give it to you, and it looks as good as new. Nothing wrong in that. But clearly, the younger generation, people like you both, world over, are realizing that sustainability is a big thing. And therefore, even bright colored clothes, dyeing process causes a lot of harm due to water pollution. Yeah. So if you track a retailer like Uniqlo, for example, a lot of the ranges are not heavy dyed products. They try and give you a lot of natural colors. Yeah. So if it's linen, it's like a kind of a grayish color. Cotton is between a white and an off-white. Yeah. Because we make it white by bleaching it, and bleaching also causes water pollution, right? So there is clearly a movement to ensure that dyes are more natural. Dyes are not used to actually harm the environment. India as a country has always been a huge market, women's wear more than men's wear, where price point is more important than quality. Yeah. So even now my wife says, I got this for $600 this kurta. Yeah. But I think where we differ from Western markets, if you go into Europe and see, the display and range is not too much. So I was there about 2 months back working for a Italian retailer, and I suddenly realized that his range is so much less than what I see in India. They give lesser range, but they give far better quality of product. So they're very tight on the quality. So my view is, over time in India, we were filling our wardrobe with lower price. Every time we see a good deal, we buy lower price. I see the shirt for 999 rupees, let me buy it. So our wardrobe has possibly shirts which will last us a lifetime. I have a feeling that over time, with consumers becoming more conscious about this, one is they will start seeking retailers or brands which talk about it. So for example, H&M talks about this shirt is made with 20% recycled product. Yeah. So interestingly, the world's largest place where used dresses are recycled is actually India. So there's a place near Alag in Gujarat where I am told now more than 100 containers come a day. And I was watching an interview of somebody who said that they segregate it. So they what needs to be mended, they mend, and they sell it back into Europe as used clothes, or it goes into Africa. In India, they still don't sell that. Yeah. And he's saying, worse come to worse, some garments which can't be reused, they take the yarns out of it. Brilliant. So the yarn can go back into making another fabric, so that nothing goes into a landfill itself. So I think these kind of awareness are going to become big in future. So my view is quality of products, especially like in fashion, could improve. People may buy a little less, pay more, but actually have lesser collection in wardrobe, but then they are good quality products which you can use for a longer time. The fact that people are being more aware of it, so you will start seeing more recycled products itself. And I also believe that hiring or leasing of even fashion may happen. Yeah? So I have a board meeting, or one of you have an interview you want to attend. And if you really think that a blazer is not something you will wear constantly, can I just go and hire a blazer only for that one wear? Yeah, I'm willing to pay 15-20% of the actual price of a blazer, but why should I just use it? I'm reading now a lot about wedding wear slowly going the leasing way. So possibly all this actually means that there is more usage per product. There are multiple people using the same product, so and therefore we will start seeing these trends catching up in India. I think, and I think it will be the younger people who will actually drive this trend itself in our country. So possibly sustainability, environment, all these are part of SDG goals that UN keeps talking about. The G20 meetings were all about those. Yeah. So my daughters would be more likely to be passionate about it than I would be, and I think that's a trend that we are really going to see in the years to come.
Got it. Thank you, sir. So moving on, we have seen that with post-COVID as well, there's been a lot of supply chain disruptions, and so there's been a lot of companies that have wanted to hedge this by diversifying their suppliers, and they've invested a lot in inventory management, and they've also started investing a lot into AI technologies that allow them to handle this. In fact, I even read about how AI has even got into the realm of pricing. So I just wanted to get your take on this particular development, and what are the strategies can retailers use to, let's say, have better supply chain, better availability, more competitive pricing while using these technologies?
Lots and lots of applications in AI. For example, marketing itself. Yeah. Today there are so many tools that one can use for generating content. So I run a digital marketing agency, and increasingly we are using a lot of paid AI tools for generating contents in different forms. It can be textual, it can be visual too. So content generation is a huge area of AI intervention. Data analytics, like I said, predictive analytics is another big area itself. Yeah, there are multiple areas where we are seeing application, and this technology is only going to become more and more prevalent as we go forward. The only thing that will stop you from movement in that direction could actually only be privacy laws itself. Yeah. For example, there is today, if you're allowing yourself to be embedded with something, even thoughts can be converted into action through technology. Yeah. So there is no end to the way this will happen. Little different from supply chain. Of course, technology always helps supply chain, because being able to accurately forecast improves efficiency in supply chain. Yeah. What did Zara teach the world? They are able to bring a collection in 45 days time. And in the fashion world, till Zara did this, the belief was it takes 6 months time. Yeah. So Zara did this in 45 days time. That was a success. Did they apply technology? Up to the hilt. They in fact did a lot of manufacturing in Europe, which is more expensive. Contra-intuitive to what other European retailers were doing. They used aircraft for moving products in, so that they cut down on the timing, because they believe that unsold inventory is a bigger headache than really spending money, and therefore they kept the gross margin low, did not have end of season sale as much as other retailers, but still turned out to be a profitable retailer. Yeah, the same company, if you were to compare with a company like Shein in China, Shein is able to do lot sizes of even 100. So Zara says that their lot size is 500. Shein is doing lot sizes of 100. So they're able to turn around even faster than what Zara is doing. So clearly, world over, technology partially, also business thinking is coming to the point of view that lead times has to come down. Even if the cost of that lead time is going to go up, the lead time has to come down. And that's what retailers like Zara are telling us, or brands like Zara are telling us. Diversification of supply chain is more a China plus one philosophy, which many brands are talking about, because during COVID, China shut down a lot of things. So therefore, they got impacted badly. Yeah, and therefore now they are looking at outsourcing it to many markets, be it Vietnam, be it Malaysia, be it India. So India will also start getting a lot of benefits in terms of manufacturing going up. Clearly, the government is pushing hard on electronics items. If you see those new regulations around licensing for laptop imports and things like that, all this is to ensure that Over time, we start telling brands that, listen, you're importing so much, make it here, we will give you a tax exemption. If import duty is 15%, for example, or 20%, we'll allow you to manufacture this by paying a GST of possibly 10% or 5%. So they'll start seeing merit in this. iPhones already started moving in, laptops will come, cameras will come. So electronics is a space where we will see a lot of manufacturing happening in India. Automatically, it means that the supply chain, at least for Indian consumers, will start becoming far better because lead times will start coming down. So supply chain diversification internationally is happening anyway. Technology, of course, has a big role to play in everything from forecasting through to being able to tell you, like what you said about pricing itself. There are platforms today in the world who will help you run effective promotions by looking at past data and telling you which consumer cohort you should be targeting this particular promotion to. So technology is definitely going to have a say in supply chain, marketing, pricing, promotions, like I even said, even a store location itself.
Got it. So just a quick follow-up as well. We even have a lot of automation that goes on in retail. Self-checkout kiosks are very popular in the US. So that is, you even mentioned at the start of the podcast how retail is actually a very big employer for a lot of people, because like you said, there's not a lot of, technical skills that you need. So shouldn't we also be, are retailers looking at its impact with respect to how there'll be a lot more people that'll be losing jobs now? It's not just retail, society as a whole. From that perspective, could we get a little bit of your opinion about how you see this development taking place?
Sure. That's the way, in fact, employment evolution itself will happen. So technology may take away some, but it creates employment in some other areas itself. I was actually thinking of something when you were asking me this question. So there are two things. Self-checkouts will work if your tagging is hard. So if tagging is not hard, then it can't work because I can walk out of a store without so if you have a tag which is hard and there's a reader for it, then you can't check out of the store, right? So many product categories like food and grocery, anyway, you can't do it as self-checkouts, or even if you do, you can do it partially by having somebody who's standing close by to ensure that you're scanning everything and going. Retail has always been a business where you make customers do some part of your work. So you make a customer come to a store, walk up to that shelf, pick up that product, try it on himself or herself, then come to the checkout and check out. So checkout automation is just one small part of making a customer do one more activity. But there are still a lot of other areas where you would want to leave people to, which is customer service, like we spoke about. How do you provide the most accurate experience? How do you ensure that the experience in offline is far better than online? How do you give information which is appropriate for a customer? How do you do display, housekeeping? In India today, even today in many markets, in many formats, seeing a neat and clean store sometimes is a challenge. So you may still want people to keep stores neat, clean, stackings done. And the best service, I always say in retail, is where a customer only comes to a cashier and only your cashier is dealing with them. Everything else should be self-explanatory for a customer. So automation will happen, technology will happen, but I think the biggest advantage for a country like India is if you look at our consumption to GDP ratio, we are close to twice that of China. So what that means is every time GDP grows, consumption also grows. And a worrying trend for the government today is over the last 2 quarters is the savings rate is coming down a little bit. And that's a worry from an economist perspective. Why would saving rate come down? Even I have no answers for it. And research is still not out as to what is causing this. But consumption rate is high. So which means when our GDP, say in 10 years time becomes double, retail has to necessarily also become double. So which means there needs to be more square footage, more stores. Yes, number of people per store could possibly come down, but not all that much. We see this everywhere, not only retail. So for example, in Bangalore airport, if you walk in now, Hyderabad, Chennai and Delhi flights are self-check-in now by Indigo. Where they're trying to kind of make you do the job of generating the baggage tag, putting it on your bag and putting it on the conveyor belt itself. So we see this happening, but what's happening in Bangalore? There are more people flying. So it's not that the number of employees have reduced. They've just been getting redeployed to some other part of the business itself. So possibly there may be a reduction in checkout people, but I'm sure it may go up in service or go up in absolute numbers with respect to retail business itself. So that's the way of the nature. I don't think we can fight that. So technology will always be a part of our life, and it will make work more productive. But we'll actually see that more employment opportunities do happen in some other area itself.
Right. So one of our listeners, Yogesh Yadav from PGP2, has asked how AI is going to influence retail space, especially in 3 sectors: store design, promotion, advertising.
Yeah. So partially I answered that around promotion advertising by saying that, not only AI, my belief in digital marketing is blockchain will actually be big. Because you're looking at transparency of data. So is that impression that is being reported by the platform, is it actually true or not? Only blockchain can help us do. In fact, blockchain can have a lot of applications in supply chain too. I missed that out when I was speaking earlier, right? A source of origin, which is a place where is it coming from? Can I trace the source of this apple that I'm selling in my store? So on and so forth. So a lot of technological influences. AI in design, of course. It'll start small because end of it, like I said, once you get your format right, it's a cookie cutter in terms of a layout. And even when I used to set up retail businesses, early days, we used to hire a lot of design firms to give us designs. But once you standardize it over a couple of stores, then somebody who understands a little bit of civil engineering or a draftsman will be able to give you layouts. So technology can very easily do it in a more optimum manner for you. Store design definitely will go the AI way. Promotions clearly will also go the AI way, because predictive data analytics in terms of marketing to which cohort, which pricing, which promotion for which segments will definitely be useful. And advertising, like I said, will find favor through blockchain and digital marketing. But also technology is carrying with it its burden of unintended consequences. So governments all over the world are now wanting to regulate AI. There is a lot of we saw what happened a couple of weeks back with Mr. Waltman, right? Altman coming out, going back. All these are philosophical differences between an operating head and a board in terms of what are the benefits and disadvantages that AI can have. Digital technology itself is going to see multi-pronged pushbacks. One, from customers who are going to worry about social media is free, but my data is being sold. So how do I feel about it? Do I want to continue being there? Will I change my behavior? Governments are bringing in controls with respect to, I don't know whether you all noticed a couple of weeks back, the telecom minister made an announcement with regard to fake content. I'm not sure whether you all saw that, but what they were trying is, the government is now saying that as a citizen, if you think something is fake, you can go to a police station, file an FIR against the platform. So they're putting the onus onto the platform. So you will see that in some cases, there will be restricted use of technology and data in terms of sharing it very, very openly. That's one. Secondly, there are some platforms which are going to be choosy about allowing third-party cookies to track. iOS and Apple has very clearly said they will not allow any other third-party cookies to operate also. So while we see some forward movement in some areas, we will also start seeing more filters or blocks in some other areas also. So I think all this is new. Governments never thought that technology can be such a disruptor to life. And therefore, they are wanting to ensure that they take control of some of these mediums itself, in their own way. And there's a lovely book on how Facebook was misused in one country. It's called An Ugly Truth, which came out about 2-3 years back. It just scares you when you read that book. So some of the power of the social mediums some of these mediums are very, very high. So if it's not understood appropriately, both by the owner of the platform and by users, we will have a lot of disruptions, and therefore which will cause heartburns too. But by the same token, some of these technologies like AI is definitely going to be around. So you have no choice. So yesterday at a LitFest, I was talking to a design head, and her worry is that, will AI take away my skills? And we were having a panel discussion on this, and I was actually saying that if you can think more, or differently, then no way it's going to take it away. Because in a way, like data analytics of the past, AI is also looking at the repertoire of content and thoughts around behind to develop something. But of course, can it throw up interesting things? It does. Today, there are so many tools which can show you visual creative designs around, which is AI developed itself. So it's definitely going to be around on the impactor side, but we'll have to wait and see how that progresses in a manner that is helpful to both the enterprise and for community of consumers at large itself.
Right. Sir, apart from blockchain and AI, what other emerging trends do you think will have a significant impact in retail?
So both virtual reality. So when we speak about experience, how do you get immersive reality, as I call it, which is both AR and VR put together. So how do you visualize things sitting at home by not actually physically going into a store? So a lot has been said about technology coming into your device at home. But what is less spoken about is technology that's going to be seen into the store itself. And that's where I think in India too, we will start seeing more tech-driven stores. They'll open up their complete inventory for you. They'll create screens where you can immerse and see a lot of things. You can consume digitally a lot of products and then choose something which can be physically consumed in the store. There are going to be multiple such technological advances itself. But VR, possibly an immersive reality, is something that clearly will help the retail experience itself much better beyond what an AI or a blockchain could actually do.
Thank you. So we also have just one final question from PGP2. This is from Vikram Gilela. He asks us, the increase in direct-to-consumer outlets, particularly we have even Mama Earth as well as has D2C options. He asks how that's going to transform the FMCG market. Because like you said, it's a lot of distributors that are involved there right now, but with the proliferation of D2C, do you see any significant change that will take place?
So I did some work for an international MNC brand in the FMCG space. So D2C is fine, provided it is not a one-off transaction, right? So if one of you were to just place an order for one shampoo, it's not worth my while to supply it to directly. It makes sense when you flip it into a CLV, which is much longer, like a subscription kind of a model, possibly. Secondly, because there are distributors and retailers doesn't mean that they can't be involved in this D2C model. For example, I get a subscription for a Gillette blade or a shaving foam, a foam once in 3 months, a Gillette blade once a month, if it can be delivered to me. P&G could still deliver it through their distributor to the local store who will deliver it to my house. So they could still be a part of the distribution channel, but just that the company would want to own me as a customer with respect to first-party data. So what we are seeing in FMCG companies in India is this drive towards owning the first-party data, which means that I need to own the customer, but I may do the delivery through the traditional supply chain itself. I may not give the complete margin because there is a cost in acquiring this customer directly. So I may pass on possibly half the margin that they're getting today. But a retailer or a distributor is happy with that because it's an incremental business for the channel itself. That's one way of looking at it. And the whole thing also depends on the best example of D2C world over was, I used to do this case a couple of years back, was called Brandless in US. But Brandless shut down because in some categories it's not easy to do D2C. In India, we already have D2C. For example, milk distribution is D2C, right? Newspapers are D2C. So it's not that it is not there. And in fact, there are, I order for a particular kind of A2 milk that I do it through this app. So I switch on and switch off depending on when I'm in Bangalore or not in Bangalore. So we will start seeing D2C, but I think the supply chain will not get disrupted, but it will actually happen through the existing supply chain. But just that the brand or the company or the brand owner would want to own the first party data of customers itself.
Right. So we have one final question before we wrap it up with recommendations from you. This is particularly relevant for our students. How should a first year MBA graduate build a profile to enter this particular field? Do you have any recommendations for how he can curate it, what he can probably do, what he needs to focus on? so that one day he too can see himself entering into this particular field?
Okay, retail is a business which is a fair combination of general management and marketing. What's important is to learn the fundamentals of marketing itself to a large extent. Yeah. So my suggestion would be retail is a mix of consumer behavior, a little bit of sales and distribution management, yeah, a little bit of brand management, and of course some things which are unique in terms of retail business itself. Yeah. But clearly, so for those of you who love general management perspective, yeah, retail is a good business to be in, because the resources on retail is largely human resources too. So you have to do a lot of, you work with large teams. Stores have a lot of people. Your warehouse and supply chain has a lot of people. You need to work with your finance and costing and commercial teams, because everything around your reporting, everything around your profitability, everything around your cost allocation is all around finance itself. In a way, retail is a fairly balanced general management kind of a role, and it's a business that once it gets into, very difficult to come out of it. Yeah. So if you ever work in retail, very difficult for you to do any other business, because like I told you, what I loved about retail the most is I can experiment pretty much with anything every day, and that helps you. So it's a lot of market research, a lot of consumer behavior, a lot of operational efficiency and general management, a lot of finance and HR. So it's a microcosm of a business world itself is what you actually see in retail. And first year students learn the basics of all fields and focus a lot more on some of the electives that you would want to pick up. Yeah. And hopefully some of you may end up working in retail for your internship, so that will kind of open up your minds a little more before you start picking electives up in the second year itself.
Right, sir. So we like to end our podcasts with either a book or podcast recommendation from our guest and a few lines for our listeners.
Okay. Books, there are many. So if I start talking, then I'll keep saying. So one of my favorites, of course, is On Grand Strategy. So if most of you have read War and Peace, then you will relate to this book a little well. This book is written by an author who teaches business strategy as a workshop. So he used to teach for the army in the US, and then he started doing this, I think, in Yale, if I remember right. Yeah, he does it as a workshop for students of the university. It's a brilliant book, and there are many more books itself. Yeah. Starting with a very old book called Maverick. It's about a business in South America and Brazil. Some of you may have seen it. To lots of, which is the latest business book per se, Small Giants that I'm reading now. So there are so many more. I am still not so much into podcasts for business. I still listen to podcasts on history and culture, but my reading is still either a Kindle or a physical book itself. Yeah. So for those of you really keen, you can get in touch with me. I've got a big list of books I can share with you. You should actually ask Ankit in PGP2. He wanted this because he wanted to buy a lot of books, and I'd given him a big long list. You can pick it up from Ankit Shetty itself. Yeah.
Thanks a lot, sir. Thank you for your time. We shot over time this time, but it was a very enriching experience. We PGP1s have not per se studied retail management yet, but your explanations were very good. We could understand at least.
Yeah, thank you so much.
I would really like to point out particularly, sir, your explanation of that negative working capital, because we always used to tell our faculties, one of the most common feedback that a lot of faculties get is that we see no connect with what you're teaching with the real world. And I don't want to comment on that, but sometimes when we are in these conversations, I did see a lot of we saw a lot of what we've learned in competition strategy, from the bargaining power we have, some of those POTUS 5 forces frameworks. I'm able to connect with some of what you've said. So I'm sure our listeners will also find, particularly first year MBA students, what you've been talking about very valuable, because they'll finally be able to see that little bit of a connect between what we've been taught theoretically to what's going on. Especially your breadth of experience is so vast. I'm sure they'll appreciate it immensely. So thank you so much.
Thank you so much. It's a great initiative you guys are doing, and anything for students in IIM Vizag. Yeah. All the best.
Thank
Thank
you.
you.